happy to be here as one of your MCs for the youth conference.
Good afternoon, everyone. You might recognize me from the game we did previously. My name is Claire Chen. I'm a sophomore at Walnut High School. I am one of the co-chairs of this event this year, as well as one of the co-presidents of Walnut High School's ACS-YA club. I hope you've all been having a great morning, and I hope we can make this an even greater afternoon. Alright, so we have two main objectives of this year's conference. Our first is to promote advocacy through education, training, and participation. And we also want to advocate for cancer prevention through the same education and support. And so, I'm going to assume a lot of you are already in the ACS-YA program, and so there are a lot of ways that you can already help aside from just coming to this event. But really, I do thank you all for your support, for even just coming to this event alone, because that in itself really is just getting involved. Like, volunteering, well, you already completed that step, am I right? And just leadership and skills training, being an advocate. Fundraising is a huge one. But obviously, maybe not all of us have the ability to do that. But if you know someone who can, definitely reach out to them. And in general, just reaching out to people, just letting them know, like if they're interested about this program, is the biggest way for us to increase our reach and to really increase the impact of our actions. And of course, if you haven't already, please follow and subscribe to our official social media accounts as well as our YouTube channel.
Yeah, so before we begin our amazing roster of panels and speakers, I do just want to go over some of our housekeeping rules to keep in mind during the duration of the conference. Because this is a hybrid conference, these rules will cover both in-person and online attendees. First of all, please make sure to mute your microphone during the presentation and be mindful of background noise. For those of you who are joining us in person, please be respectful and be quiet during other people's presentations so everyone can learn from this experience. Second, we encourage you to turn on your camera to fully participate and position your camera properly. That's for the online participants. Third, we'll periodically record sessions and take videos of the audience and of presentations, and record the chat during the cessation support groups to use for program awareness materials and promotional material. So just be aware of that, and we will notify the participants prior to photo taking or recording. Fourth, if during this meeting you would like to ask a question, please feel free to use either the chat or save your questions to the end. For those of you who are in person, we have designated Q&A time after every presentation. Fifth, at the end of the conference, we'll encourage you to complete a survey to let us know what you think about the conference. And sixth, if you need to leave at any point during the conference to use the bathroom or because for a personal matter, please leave in a quiet and respectful manner.
And also, by the way, just adding on to the point about turning on your camera for you in-person participants. This means to not be looking at your phone while people are presenting. I know, shocking, but maybe you need to be a bit respectful of all the people who took their time to come here today. That's all. Alright, so let's go over I'm going to give you guys a brief roadmap of what we're going to be doing today. So obviously, we already went through the whole luncheon, we did our fun games, but now we're here, and so after me and Jerry, we finished talking, we wrapped this up, the wonderful Angela Unayan over there, who, my great friend, who I really cannot phrase enough, she will be giving a short speech for us. Following that, we will have our first keynote speaker, Ms. Letitia Noguera, present. And then I will be coming back here along with Angela to give you all a presentation for recycling and how that relates to cancer in general. We will have our first panel about the the ACS-YA Stop Pollution campaign. In between that, we will have a quick game show, so please definitely keep that in mind because I'm sure a lot of you will definitely enjoy that, and I know some of you are definitely really competitive. Then, after our game show, we will have our second panel, which is promoting HPV awareness. Then, in between our second and third panel, we will have a presentation from Ms. Leslie Han. And finally, we will have our third panel about tobacco prevention with Jerry as well as Hannah Yang. Then we will wrap this up with our closing survey and any other thoughts that we might have had. So now, everyone, please give a warm welcome to Miss Angela Unayan.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm gonna make this short just because we're running a little behind schedule. But I'm so happy that I get to come up here and see all of you again because most likely I've seen you more than once at one of our previous events. So the last event that you might have attended was our Relay for Life, and there I also did give a little bit of an update, but I'm now officially in remission and I'm no longer receiving treatment. And one of the biggest things that I kind of want to talk about today is just a reminder that it doesn't matter whether you've experienced or been through, something as serious as cancer or not, but you can still make a difference. You can still motivate others. You can still, tell other people, educate people on these issues and how serious these things are. And raising awareness is not going to be something that, one person alone can do. It's something that requires all of us to, do a little bit of research, understand what these things are, and then going to other people and sharing that knowledge. Only this way can we really reach full awareness. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. And once again, thank you so much for having me here today. I will be talking more later, so I'll see you in a bit.
And with that, we will have our first adult speaker. We have Letitia Noguera. Ms. Noguera will be presenting on how climate change and extreme weather events and cancer impact cancer patients' access to treatment and survival. So everyone, please give a warm welcome to Ms. Noguera.
Share some slides. It looks like it's I'm not allowed at this point.
Where is this guy? Where is the it's in Zoom? But where is the presentation? Is here? Which one? This one?
No, she has no slide.
But she's not sharing with that.
Oh, what have to get off?
Just give her the right to share her slide.
Yeah.
The slide is on this one.
No,
If
cannot.
you stop sharing, it might work. I've seen that happen before.
Can we use Zoom?
Cannot.
Okay. Let's see.
Do we have a copy of her slide in here?
No. No.
Why not? Gosh.
Can you send us your slide?
Can you see my slides now?
Yeah, it's working already.
Yeah, it's already.
Oh, but it's not projected.
Cannot. No.
She has we share use your
Here, yeah, add one more to it.
Okay.
Yeah, hold on.
Okay, we're working on searching for another computer, so we can project the doctor's.
Yeah, we have some technical difficulties right now, so we're trying to get the slideshow pulled up and then we'll continue. Thank you.
That's all right. Sorry. Yeah, just yeah, connect this. It doesn't matter. No, just bring it to that one. No. For this one. Yeah. Here we go.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Great. All right, let me know when it's okay to get started. We're good?
Yeah, should be good. Yeah. Mute this one. Oh no, you have to turn it on.
All right. So, my name is Lucia Nogueira. I am a researcher at the American Cancer Society.
No, this
Although
one.
I don't think I qualify as an adult speaker. I'm happy to be here today to tell you a little bit about the connection between climate change and cancer.
Or maybe use
So
this one.
Hurricane
That's
Harvey
okay.
was when climate change and cancer collided for me. I was working in the Texas State Health Department at the time, and I was able to see firsthand
Let's stop.
the impact that climate-driven disasters can have on communities. Let me explain. Climate change alters the behavior of extreme weather events. Warmer air cools more water vapor, which increases the capacity of hurricanes.
Those are lots.
See this before. This is a map
Yeah, this is turning on.
showing rainfall over Houston during Harvey. And Noah had to add new colors to the legend because it had never rained so much in one spot before. Now here's the thing, this was not the first time that Houston had been impacted by a hurricane. And at hospitals, while they were prepared, they all had backup generators, but Harvey was different. It stalled over Houston, then it rained, then it flooded, then the backup generators flooded. Extreme weather events can damage medical infrastructure, break transportation lanes, disrupt supply chains, and interrupt access to medical care. And the changing behaviors has making harder for communities to respond to increasingly unpredictable circumstances, which is especially concerning for medically vulnerable populations who rely on uninterrupted access to care, such as cancer patients. So after working in response to Harvey, I joined the American Cancer Society, and the very first project I proposed was to evaluate the impact of hurricanes on cancer patients. And when I said that, people started laughing. Should you say hurricanes and cancer? And I'm telling you this because I don't want you to be discouraged from leaning on your lived experiences when proposing any project throughout your entire life. All research works out is research. We bring our personal experiences and impressions about the world to everything that we do. And as more and more of us are personally exposed to climate-driven disasters, the expertise that we gain from these lived experiences is exactly the type of knowledge that we need to tackle such a rapidly evolving crisis. It took some moments, but in the end, we did run this study and used the National Cancer Database, which is a hospital cancer registry that's co-sponsored by the American Cancer Society and the American College of Surgeons. And we linked it with FEMA data that has information about disasters, which we used to identify facilities, cancer treatment facilities that were impacted by a hurricane. And in the end, we found that lung cancer patients whose facility was impacted by a hurricane through their radiation treatment had worse overall survival or worse mortality, whichever way you want to think about it, than patients who were treated at those same facilities but at a time when no disasters happened. And this shows component here is releasing greenhouse gases, which are contributing to climate change, and also releasing carcinogens in communities, which is hindering our cancer prevention efforts. And because climate change alters the frequency and behavior of extreme weather events, making it harder for people to prepare and respond to disasters, when disaster strikes, these communities can be exposed to even higher levels of these carcinogens, such as what happened in Houston during Hurricane Harvey. And these climate-driven disasters can also result in disruptions in access to cancer care. So climate change can impact every single step that is important to control cancer, including survivorship, because people who have been diagnosed with cancer are a vulnerable population to the health hazards of climate change due to the physical, psychological, and socioeconomic consequences of cancer diagnosis and treatment. The physical and psychological consequences listed here, for example, due to increased sensitivity to the health hazards of climate change. Some cancer treatment drugs can inhibit thermoregulation, which is our ability to control our body's temperature, so that makes us more vulnerable during heat waves. Our weakened immune system also makes people more vulnerable to infections, and infections are common after floods. Cancer diagnosis and treatment also has socioeconomic consequences due to out-of-pocket expenses and changes in the ability to remain employed, to have a job. And these socioeconomic consequences can impact our adaptive capacity, or our ability to cope with climate hazards, because they make it harder for us to prepare and respond to disasters. Financial hardship impacts our ability to evacuate, stockpile food, or adapt our housing infrastructure to cope with extreme weather events, such as using air conditioning, which costs money, or having the money to install special air filters during wildfires. We recently used NASA's satellite data to evaluate the association between proximity to wildfires and survival among non-cancer patients. We chose to use NASA's satellite data instead of on-the-ground air quality monitors. You might have seen those before, and that's because proximity to wildfires go beyond exposure to air pollution and includes the stress associated with potentially having to evacuate, water and soil contamination, threat to your property and your life, and your pet's life. And these are present no matter which way this smoke plume is blowing. And here again we used the CDB data and found that patients who were exposed to a wildfire within 6 months of discharge from the hospital following lung cancer surgery had worse survival or worse mortality than unexposed patients, showing how cancer patients are a vulnerable population to the threats of climate change. There are really 3 factors that determine vulnerability to climate hazards: exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity. Exposure is our human contact with the hazards. Sensitivity is the degree to which that hazard is going to impact us, and adaptive capacity is our ability to cope with those hazards. We just saw a few examples of how cancer diagnosis can increase sensitivity and decrease adaptive capacity, therefore influencing our vulnerability to climate hazards. But people are more than their cancer diagnosis. Due to the way our society is structured, different individual characteristics, including the groups we're racialized into, our gender identity, the languages we speak, our socioeconomic status, all impact our vulnerability to the health hazards of climate change, including age. Pound for pound, children breathe more air, drink more water, and eat more food than adults, resulting in higher levels of exposure to environmental pollutants. Children are also more likely to put their hands in their mouth. Children's bodies are still growing and developing several organ functions, so they're less able to process some of these harmful contaminants. And organs that are developing have increased vulnerability because the cells are dividing faster to some of the carcinogens. So unfortunately, whenever there's an increase in environmental pollutants in a community, the first cases of worsening health are seen in the pediatrician's office. Children are the first to suffer. But what do I mean by the way our society is structured? I think that the journalist Isabel Wilkinson explained this concept best in her recent book, Past. There's a movie now too if you don't want to read the book. Our society is structured in hierarchical layers, meaning that some people are considered more worthy of protection or of investment than other people. One of the most widely recognized examples of this is redlining, when racial composition was used as part of assessment that was of areas that were worthy of receiving federal loans during recovery from the Great Depression. This homeowners loan corporation was responsible for determining who should get these loans from the federal government, and they used people's race to determine where these loans should go. Of course, this strategy of controlling access to resources, especially land, was nothing new. And as this map of indigenous land theft shows, the complex ended up being a very clear marker of how discriminatory policies and practices within and outside of home had long-lasting consequences due to systemic disinvestment in communities that were targeted for marginalization. Historical racist practices included mob violence against Black individuals who tried to move into White neighborhoods, and undervaluing, so evaluating a property as being less valuable in Black neighborhoods. In this practice, this is still done today. And together, all of these racist practices fostered racial residential segregation. And racial residential segregation, meaning that people of different races ended up moving or living in different neighborhoods, this created a platform for broad disinvestment in these neighborhoods, including infrastructure, green space, housing stock, roads, services, transportation, schools, garbage collection, and employment opportunities. And as we saw, limited access to resources can hinder our adaptive capacity, our ability to cope with environmental hazards. So similar to the socioeconomic challenges faced by people who have been diagnosed with cancer, people from communities that were targeted for marginalization also face socioeconomic challenges that make it harder to prepare and respond to disasters. Broad disinvestment in these communities also led to a concentration of psychosocial stressors and created barriers in access to health resources, including a concentration of alcohol and tobacco stores and barriers in access to healthy foods. And these barriers then resulted in an increased prevalence of chronic disease burden, meaning more health diseases in these areas, such as obesity, asthma, chronic kidney condition. And as we saw, some chronic diseases increase our sensitivity to climate hazards, again similar to sensitivity experienced by people who have been diagnosed with cancer. And finally, neighborhoods that were targeted for marginalization are also more likely to be exposed to environmental hazards. And exposure is the third component of vulnerability to climate hazards. This includes air pollution and even heat, the post-child of climate change. I think we're all tired of hearing about the temperatures today are the highest they have ever been. And this feeling now has a name, broken record breaking. An exposure to extreme heat is one example of the long-lasting consequences of discriminatory policies and practices, because impervious surfaces such as asphalt and concrete trap heat in urban centers, which is also known as urban heat islands. And urban heat islands are more common in previously redlined areas. And here we can start to see how racism is a system with compounding consequences. Because if increased exposure wasn't enough, individuals from communities targeted for marginalization are more likely to have their electricity cut off, disconnected, than individuals who are racialized as white, who receive the same shut-off notice, exacerbating disparities in heat-related health hazards by decreasing the adaptive capacity of these communities. Now, even if you have air pollution, and you can unfortunately turn it on, it doesn't mean you'll be able to use it during a heat wave. The changing climate is making power failures more common, due in part to people increasing demand on the electrical grid by turning on the AC. These figures show modeled indoor temperatures during a heat wave with the power on and with the power off, such as during a blackout. I'm showing this because there's this biased perception that climate change is going to be a problem for those people over there. But climate change is already a problem for all of us. While it is true that communities targeted for marginalization suffer first and most from the health hazards of climate change, nobody is safe. And it's exactly because communities targeted for marginalization suffer first and most that we need to include these neglected voices in the conversation. A lot of times when you're closer to the problem, targeted for marginalization, where systematic exclusion of these individuals from power structures led to political disempowerment, which is also true for hazardous waste sites, a fundamental environmental justice issue. There are several examples of individuals from these communities now leading resistance to the development and expansion of infrastructure with significant implications to climate change and political solutions. Yes, so far this talk has been very depressing, so let's talk a little bit about solutions. If we understand that our continued reliance on fossil fuels is a shared cause of climate change and an increasing exposure to carcinogens, then we understand why engaging with the expertise of individuals from environmental justice communities is fundamental for identifying solutions with climate and health co-benefits, such as the post-development of more fossil fuel infrastructure. Cancer Alley in Louisiana did not get this nickname because of his research. This knowledge of the increased risk of cancer that was associated with the siting of nearly 200 petrochemical facilities in one community, this came from their lived experiences. So it's no surprise that this community has also identified the solution and is now leading opposition to another petrochemical facility to promote some plastic plants. And you might remember some other relevant examples, such as opposition to the Dakota Access Pipeline. Now I know that the Dakota Access Pipeline and the Formosa plastic plants might feel very far away from home. So let me try to give another example that could be closer. Highway construction was another government-sponsored discriminatory policy that fostered racial segregation. It was also called white men's roads through black men's homes. Highway construction prioritized transportation of white people who had privileged access to property in suburban areas. And they targeted predominantly black neighborhoods, demolished property, and forced businesses to close. Again, limiting access to resources. Unsurprisingly, individuals from these communities that were targeted for highway construction and therefore have been closer to the problem are now leading neighborhood reconstruction efforts aimed at removing this type of infrastructure. Again, with implications for climate change because highways prolong our dependence on fossil fuels. And also for cancer control because it is true that people who live in these neighborhoods that were targeted for construction of highways and are disproportionately exposed to air pollution. You cannot tell air pollution to stay in one place. So highway removal reduces exposure to air pollution in the entire population. If you want another example, dietary choices are another point where climate change and health outcomes intersect. Environmentally responsible food manufacture, shipment, and waste options are frequently associated with healthier food options. We know, for example, that meat for ruminants has the highest environmental impact, no matter how you measure it. If you consider the emissions associated with the production, processing, and transportation of feed of what the animals eat, and also the methane emissions by the ruminants, the energy consumption at the feedlots and slaughterhouses, and the amount of antibiotics and pesticides used, and the waste generated by the animals, then it's easy to understand why the environmental impact of meat production is so significant. But it's not just meat, right? It's the industrialization of the food system that's the problem. This type of food production that relies on land clearing, monocultures, heavy machinery, processing, packaging, external inputs, herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers. They have environmental and health consequences, especially if you consider all the food additives, the food coloring, preservatives, emulsifiers that these foods contain. Given the significant overlap between climate change and cancer control solutions, we recently evaluated the inclusion of climate change in comprehensive cancer control plans. Out of the 65 states, territories, and tribal health organizations that have a comprehensive cancer control plan, 2 actually mention climate change. But more than half of the plans included cancer control strategies. There are also climate mitigation and adaptation strategies, and some included more than one. For example, disasters are becoming more frequent with climate change, and also some disaster preparedness strategies have climate change and cancer control co-benefits. And again, we have communities targeted for marginalization to thank for this knowledge because after Hurricane Maria devastated the electric grid in Puerto Rico, island residents have been leading these clean energy sources generated on site, such as microgrids, also reduces exposure of surrounding communities to toxic air pollution during emergencies. And these strategies are now being adopted in other settings, including healthcare facilities, reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, facilitating transition to clean energy, which is especially important here in the United States, where the healthcare system is the second most emission-intensive industry in the United States. So increasing use of clean energy sources on site is really important. Other plans mention having adaptation strategies that are relevant for cancer preventive behaviors, such as planting trees to facilitate outdoor activity, exercising outside during hot days. So trees, of course, provide shade with reduced local temperatures, but they also transpire, which further reduces local temperatures. You might have found that if you ever stood under a tree and then under one of those concrete man-made structures. Also, the soil around the trees helps with water infiltration, so they can help reduce flood risk. And this type of green infrastructure also captures carbon and reduces air pollution. So trees were also mentioned as a strategy to reduce air pollution, which is one of the most obvious connections with cancer. And several others plans mention strategies to incentivize active transportation. That's when you don't take a single car to go somewhere, which has health benefits because it increases physical activity, and climate benefits because it reduces our reliance on single vehicle transportation, which we talked about today already. Worth mentioning here that the neighborhood reconstruction efforts we just discussed would also count as a climate mitigation and adaptation strategy with cascading health benefits, because air conditioning, if you turn it on, also is using electricity, so it's contributing to global warming. But a highway reconstruction project that increases tree coverage would decrease the local temperature and improve air quality and facilitate physical activity. And finally, the most common solution was actually those related to reducing our reliance on the industrialized food system, including community gardens, farmer markets, reducing consumption of ultra-processed foods, and including traditional foods and dietary guidelines. So this is what makes me hopeful. All of this overlap between what's the right thing to do for the climate and the environment is also the right thing to do for our health. And there's something for each one of us to do, and we do need to do something, because in the end we all have three choices when it comes to climate change: mitigation, adaptation, or suffering. The more mitigation we do, the less adaptation will be necessary, and the less suffering there will be. And examples of things that we can do for mitigation is, of course, to change in some environmentally responsible policies and practices. I saw that there's a talk coming up right after mine about some of the local efforts on this. Adaptation, of course, is super important. This emergency preparedness, disaster preparedness and response, especially when it comes to safeguarding access to healthcare. And of course, nobody wants to contribute to suffering, but we can talk about it openly by case through research the types of suffering that are already happening with climate change in a way that it helps us identify the solutions. This is a list of several different things that people in different professions can do. And a lot of times I show this list, and I hope you're not having this view, but just in case you're looking at this and thinking, yeah, okay, like there is no way my school or, where my parents work would ever do any of these things. So I wanted to just ask you, can you smoke at your high school? And any of your teachers smoke? Can your preschool smoke? This was not the case when I was in high school, and we changed it. Nobody can smoke indoors anymore. And so, if you're attending this talk, you will certainly have the power to make a difference. This all starts somewhere, so use your leverage. Move the world. Thank you. And if we have time for questions with the technical difficulties, but I'll be here again, the environmental justice panel.
Okay, I'm just gonna use a separate mic just because we'll both be presenting the next topic, but I want to first remind everyone, I actually am very disappointed in everyone because I keep on hearing people talking during Dr. Nagara's presentation, and I want to remind you all that, we have reached out to him numerous times, and she's on the East Coast, and she decided to make time for us. So please, be more respectful to these people, and please, if you're here, try to learn something from it. I really do not appreciate the constant whispering behind me, the sudden laughter, and I see people on their phones. It's very disrespectful. So please keep that in mind as we present for the next few topics. Okay, so in the meantime, while we figure out how to put back on the presentation, I just want to kind of quickly introduce ourselves. Once again, I am Angela, and this is Claire. And today, this is what we'll be presenting on. So we're going to talk about how we can tackle climate change, cancer, and environmental justice together as ACS Youth Ambassadors. So this is slightly overlapping with Dr. Nagara's speech, but we're just going to go over some other things that we ourselves as teens can do. Okay, next slide, please. So what are our objectives? You can read, it's up there. So first, awareness. Second, collaboration. And 3, actions. What do these mean? These means that you need to be paying attention, and that it means that you need to listen, learn, and actually do something about what you're hearing here today. Okay. So, next slide, please. So you can see this is literally us. This is just a program that we're doing for Walnut High School, as we are the club co-presidents. And you can see here, this is something that we did several months ago to promote ACS recycling program. And we'll go into a little more detail.
Okay, so the mic is a bit. Oh, okay. No, it's just that I'm good. Okay. All right. So let's talk about wildfires. So in case you were, listening to Dr. Nogira's presentation, which I'm sure all of you were attentively doing, then you would know that wildfires are incredibly devastating, especially to people who are currently suffering, who have survived cancer, not only because of the smoke that comes from it, but also just because, it's stressful knowing that there's a fire, maybe next door, and that you might have to completely move your house or just, go somewhere else because of this fire. And if you're like me, and you live in Walnut or close to Walnut, you know how bad the heat wave was this year. That was actually abysmal. So if we don't do something about climate change, not only are these wildfires gonna get worse, you're gonna also keep having to stay indoors, and God knows how long that air conditioner is gonna last you, as the world keeps getting hotter and hotter, and it'll only exacerbate the conditions that cancer patients are already facing. Let's move on.
Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, we are part of a recycling program. And so let's talk about why it's so important to recycle. I think the biggest things that we all think about is reduce, reuse, recycle. And this is really important because we want to make sure that whatever we can reuse, we reuse. And then it's only whatever, what we can't use again that we throw away. Why? Because these things literally can take forever to break down. Think about plastic. That will literally stay there until you're dead, and maybe even the next 5 generations after you, it'll still be there. This is the reason why if there's something that we know that we can reprocess into new products, we really need to do that so that we aren't harming our environment and ourselves anymore. So next slide, please. And so you can see here in this chart that some things that maybe we didn't really think about as a form of pollution would be this, cooking fumes. How many of you cook? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, well, even if you don't cook right now, eventually you might, because eventually we're all going to be adults and we need to eat something, right? So let's keep this in mind that cooking fumes are also bad for your health, which means that A, either you want to wear a mask or a ventilator while you cook, which I think would be pretty inconvenient. B, you could stand really far away so that you're not breathing it in. Or C, you could do things such as making sure that maybe you have an exhaust fan to suck away those fumes instead of you breathing in those fumes. So all these things considered, like take all the preventative actions that you can. Some of the other things that are up here on this list that we can prevent is this one. What is tobacco? I hope everyone knows what that is. It's literally the cigarettes, right? And it's not just cigarettes. There's also e-cigarettes and a bunch of other new products nowadays. But please avoid it. Like I think we all know how bad like tobacco is as a carcinogen, but also it's also bad for the environment as well. And then decorating materials. So I don't know if people really know this, but I hope that you do. Fireworks, they release that smoke that you see. You probably don't want to breathe that in. If you've ever breathed it in, you probably know how bad it is to actually smell that fume. So, stay away from that. And then the other thing you can see up there is particulate matters. And you see a car. I think we all know that cars produce, greenhouse gases, right? Okay, well, let's try and either carpool with people or reduce our usage of cars that emit greenhouse gases by taking public transport, or maybe getting a vehicle that doesn't produce as much and is more fuel efficient. And some of the other things that are a little bit harder to control would be chemicals and microorganisms, but yeah. Next.
Okay, honestly, this section is kind of me reiterating what Dr. Noguera said, but I'm afraid a lot of you did not pay attention to this, so this may be mind-blowing to some of you. All right, so in case you didn't know already, climate change exacerbates a lot of natural disasters. Think hurricanes. There were a lot of, let's just say, devastating ones this year. I already talked about wildfires, and of course, droughts in California. It's like a staple of our culture at this point. And aside from just, all the diseases that can come from this, one thing that we need to talk about as well is just destruction to homes as well as ecosystems, because destruction of ecosystems means less trees and in general to combat these chemicals, as well as destruction of homes. And these homes could belong to cancer caregivers, or even worse, the cancer patients themselves. And that's just something we really need to keep in mind. And one stat up there that I thought was really interesting was that between 5,200 and 8,500 respiratory emissions per year are aggravated by wildfires in the USA. And as someone who, I don't have super severe asthma, but it definitely affects my life, that is not very helpful to think about. And in general, something that I also wanted to point out during Dr. Noguera's presentation was that she said that climate change is currently causing icebergs to melt, and that's releasing pollutants that were being stored up before back into our environment. And those are just more factors for the contraction of cancer. And yeah, this is the main point, that cancer, treating cancer already is definitely a huge economic burden and financial burden to the people who suffer it. And some people may not be as fortunate as us, and we're just able to pay it. Some people, I think we need to also keep in mind that cancer can really happen to anyone. It could happen to the poor, it could happen to the rich. But if it happens to someone who's struggling with poverty, then paying the expenses is not exactly just a sort of, oh yeah, I can just get this done with. And even then, there's a lot of people who also just struggle with mental health issues, like anxiety and depression. And we've seen that there's a link between that and climate change. And so, just in general, climate change is bad for cancer. It's bad for the economy. It's bad for us. And so that's just what I really need you guys to just get through your head, that even though you might not feel the effects now, if we don't act now, you'll feel the worst effects later on.
Okay, so next up, I'm just gonna really quickly go over this, and please do have the ACS dot panel later on. But tobacco doesn't just affect, your health, your body, but also the environment, because you know, if you've ever been to Asia, you might have seen cigarette butts lying on the ground, and just because, you know, nobody's using them anymore doesn't mean that they're not releasing toxic chemicals into our environment. So it's extremely important to know that if we can reduce tobacco usage, we can also reduce those harmful chemicals that, you know, end up becoming secondhand smoke or just pollution. Yeah, I think that's what I'm just going to go over right now, and please pay attention later on as they go more in depth as to how tobacco affects your health. Okay, so I also mentioned this earlier, like nowadays it's not just like traditional cigarettes, there's also vapes, there's also e-waste and all of that. And obviously e-waste isn't just from tobacco products, we're also talking like about batteries and things like that. All of those chemical compounds within a battery is pretty damaging to to our bodies if ever we come into contact with those things. So if we can recycle batteries, reuse them, like that's also a great thing to consider. Next.
Okay, so now I want to talk about something that you might have heard of already, but if you haven't, well, here it is, microplastics. And so, I'm sure you've all probably heard about, you know, people littering by the beach, you know, people throwing plastic bags. You know, there was the whole scandal about how, oh my God, the turtles are eating plastic straws and whatever back when I was like in 3rd grade. But that's actually kind of serious and not just jokes. And because plastics are designed to last for a really long time, and that is, while, you know, it's good for products, it's not exactly good when they're thrown out into the environment. The environment doesn't know how to handle it because there are a lot of factors that can help break down plastics, like UV rays, just, you know, natural exposure to the environment over time, animals, you know, eating them. And plastics don't just like disappear like once they're digested. They just break down into even smaller plastics. And when you think about how fish are consuming those plastics in the ocean right now, and then you think about how the fish get onto our plate later on in the day. I'm going to repeat that because I don't think a lot of you guys just like process that. Fish will eat plastic that we throw into the ocean. That ocean is broken down, it goes into the fish, and that fish is going to end up on our plate.
And eventually into our stomach. But
Plastics in our stomach. Isn't that fun to think about? I'll just let that simmer for a second. So, maybe you have no idea what that implies. Like, sure, okay, there's plastic sitting in my stomach, but like, what does that mean? Okay, well, I'll tell you what that means. It means that, well, microplastics are linked to a variety of chemicals which can cause cancers and damage your DNA, which is, you know, linked to causing cancer, like for instance, skin cancer and colorectal cancer. And there's just a lot of ways you can contract microplastics and having it end up in your body aside from just, you know, eating it through some random fish or whatever. And we still don't even know much about how microplastics affect our body because, you know, if you think about it, it's only a really recent material, not when it's been around for like decades. And so God knows what that could do to our body. So for all you know, there could be microplastics flowing throughout your bloodstream right now, and you would have absolute no idea. So just really think about that as we continue to talk about the importance of recycling when it comes to climate change because, well, if you don't recycle and if you don't take care of your plastics responsibly, well, let's just say it's not going to be too healthy for your body.
you might end up becoming the recycle bin instead. I think that's how we can put it. Okay, so we're just going to go over one last thing. Please change the slides. Okay, so recycling, we already mentioned this once before. So did you know that recycling paper can save 17 trees and reduce pollution by up to 75%? Now you do. Next. So yeah. Okay, well, thank you everyone.
All right,
Wait.
Oh no, spoilers, guys, don't look. What the?
Okay. Well, I think that's about time for our presentation anyways. So if you want to learn more about our recycling program, just reach out to us, on our socials and also through acsforchange@gmail.com. So now we're going to move into our panel discussion so that we can still stay somewhat on track. Today on the panel will be me, Claire, Dr. Hu, who's right here, say hi. And then Dr. Noguera will be joining us online, and I'm going to make sure that we can hear her this time.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This thing works.
Hello? Okay, this thing works, that's good.
Okay. So now we're just gonna discuss these things. And Claire, can you please lead the panel?
Alright, so one of our first questions is, what are the most critical areas for youth involvement in the fight against climate change and cancer? And I guess I can really just start this off. It's just like, I do believe that social media is a huge part in having youth really participate in this movement against pollution and climate change in general. Because while I'm sure a lot of youth are aware about the effects of climate change and how to recycle and why recycling is good in general, they're not exactly moved enough to really care about it, partly because, well, a majority of youth are put in a really privileged position, but also because, in general, social media doesn't really talk about this. We see all the funny things, all the things we're interested in right now, but not a lot of youth have really climate change and pollution as one of their sort of key things to really worry about right now. And I think that's a really important thing that needs to be brought up when it comes to approaching how youth can get involved in this movement.
So Dr. Noguera or Dr. Hu, do you have any other suggestions as to how youth can tackle this climate change issue?
Any sort of advice or?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? This time?
Yes?
We can hear you.
Oh, great. So I already love the way you're thinking about this problem and seeing recycling not only as, the raw materials that are used, but also the pollution ends up in the landfill and then how that impacts marine life or the people who live around it.
I think that the next step, since you're already on that path, that I'm thinking about is that aluminum, for example, which was one of the ones that mentioned in the presentation, has a recycling rate of nearly 100%, and it can be recycled over and over again. Plastic is a completely different story. Less than 9% of what we put in our recycling bin actually gets recycled. The rest of it ends up in the ocean or in the landfills. So we have a very bad plastic problem. And I talked a little bit during my presentation about how it starts where it is produced, right? All of the contaminants that are released in the neighborhoods around those places, and it might not be like you were saying. Not everybody of any age has seen that. It's horrible. But you are consuming it, and you don't even need to think about the plastic going in the ocean, going in the fish, and then you eat fish. I think that possibly one of the lowest hanging fruit for action here are single-use plastics in your daily life. That our research now shows that just drinking water from a plastic water bottle can lead to a spike in microplastics in your serum, in your blood. And so there is nothing more useless than a plastic water bottle, not even disposable. straightforward next step if you already recognize all of the issues throughout the plastics life cycle.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Yoshida. Dr. Hu, do you have any other suggestions?
I really echo what Claire, Angela, and Dr. Nogari was talking about recycling. I think in sustainable practices is very important. It's something that every student can do, right? And something that we can start from ourselves. And also another thing is that we can bring these practices to communities, to campuses, and let others know we are here. We're fortunate to be here to join the conference, to learn from the experts, getting to know how the pollution affects our health, how it's related to cancer, how the plastic and microplastics affect people's health, right? But a lot of other people may not have the privilege to learn about that, to know all this information. So as I think as youth, you could bring this information to others, to your friends, and to maybe to schools where they don't have so much resources to discuss things like this. So in addition to recycle, I'm thinking that maybe the educational awareness is also very important. I think the youth are, like Claire said, social media is really important, and it's something that I think the young generation is really good at, right? Think about your social media account. I bet every one of you has like at least a dozen, a few dozen or a few hundred. Oh, someone is laughing. I totally understand that. I know that there might be like social media influencers here that have even like thousands of followers. I teach in college classes. I know some of my students are like already big influencers. They influence a lot of people. So use those social media tools to create videos, bring pictures, to educate others about the importance of climate change and pollution. So I think that's what I want to say. And also, I think what maybe related to advocacy that young people can do. Well, we're going to talk about that later. I want to say that regarding sustainable practices, in addition to recycling, there are other things we could do as well. I think Dr. Nogari or Claire and I'm not sure which presentation talked about the cooling effect of trees, right? So we could plant more trees to help ease the heat and improve the climate change too.
Yeah, thank you so much for reiterating some of the really important points, and to really let us understand how we can actually use social media in a positive way, especially since nowadays I feel like a lot of us, we don't really realize how a lot of the content isn't necessarily helpful or good, but we can make it into something good. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a different question, and now I want to kind of ask you guys, what resources and tools can we use, and how can we empower people to either recycle or spread use online, or any of the other suggestions that you guys just mentioned. So Dr. Hu or Dr. Noguera, whoever would like to speak.
Or I can get us started with a small, maybe chunk of my experience. Aside from the whole spiel about social media, which I definitely appreciate from Dr. Hu because it really highlighted a lot of the huge impacts that social media can have. I think aside from social media, just at your school, I'm sure a lot of you guys have a lot of clubs at your school, maybe dedicated to the environment, or possibly even to cancer prevention, like ACS, or even just like health in general. I know HOSA is a big one at my school. And so in general, I feel like even just participating in those clubs and just really kind of getting to know people in the club, doing their activities, just joining a club and finding friends in a community in which you enjoy and activities you like doing help contribute to not only like cancer awareness, but also to the topic at hand, which is of course stopping pollution and climate change as a whole.
And if I may, I just want to say, if you want to take it a step further and really advocate in your community, get to know the people in ASB, talk to your teachers, talk to your counselors. If there's anything that you see on campus that you want to change, you really need to be the one to go up to them and be like, hey, I know this issue and I want to propose the solution. And it may not always work out just because sometimes the logistics won't work, but it is a first step to start that conversation and maybe brainstorm together as a group in order to find those solutions. And who knows, maybe if you can make one change in your school, that change can translate into your district, that change can translate into a bigger community, and maybe eventually it can become a nationwide change. Everything has to start from somewhere, and sometimes it's looking for those resources online. There's so many things that you can do now, and I'm sure if you really don't have time to really look up every individual one, there's ChatGPT. I'm not saying use AI in your homework, no. But if you want to learn more and you want to have a summary of things and maybe look for reliable sources to continue on your research, this is something that you can do to kind of get that first step of the way if research feels like a really big thing that you don't really know how to do. So please make use of the resources of the technology that we have and be responsible with how you use it. I think that's the biggest part.
Power than you realize. The number of, I'm sorry, but it's about this time where my dog has to eat and he's not happy. But anyways, you have so much more power than you realize. The amount of, I've been working with climate change for a long time. And so many times I will talk with a more established researcher, older person, and they will tell me, oh, climate change is not important, or even if they don't say it's not real, even if they think, yeah, it's real, but it's, a future thing, it's not important. It's, we have other things to think about, or there's nothing that I really can do, or it doesn't matter to me. And so I'll have a conversation after one of my talks, and then 3 or 4 months later, I'll get an email or a call from the same person saying, what were you saying about climate change again? Because my daughter or my son were talking to me about it, and what they said reminded me of this one thing that you said, or I had a video conversation with my granddaughter, and now I am going to commit my retirement to working on climate change. And I remember you gave a talk 3 years ago. Is there anything that I can do today? The amount of power that younger people have to spread the word and really change minds, because you are the picture of climate change, right? People might say this is a future problem. First, it's not. It's already here. But for the people who still think like that, you have that power, right, to say this is a problem for me, and anybody who cares about you is going to start seeing these things everywhere they look because they love you, right? And so you have so much power to spread the word about how our own activities are making this happen, and it is going to have a really bad influence on our health, right? It's not about polar bears. It's about our own health. The things that we're doing here are already impacted. It's not 2030, 2100. It's here, right? And it's our health. And so I think the more you talk about it, the more you ask your parents not to bring plastic water bottles, or to not idle the car while they're waiting for you to play soccer, or to not. I live in Florida now. You live in California. I'm hoping things are better now. There are several other things like plastic bags that are still around here. They might not have to deal with that. But start thinking in those terms, right? These things that we're doing right now are already impacting our health and are making things even worse with climate change. And so I think that the more you speak up, and speak up to people who
much. Dr. Jane, can you just kind of like summarize everything that you want all of us to walk away with today?
I totally agree that I think youth voices are very powerful. Every one of here, there are a lot of things you can do to help improve the situation, improve the environment, kind of spread the words. I think there are so many things we can do in every day without taking action is really a day lost. And everybody should take your responsibility and start from yourself, starting from sustainable practices, bring educational awareness, and doing advocacies that we've been talking about. I think the environment and the world will be a better place.
Thank you so much. And so this will conclude our panel. So thank you, everyone.
Oh yeah, just quickly, thank you to Angela and to all of the our panelists. I would just like to remind you guys that for your Smarty Goals worksheets, one of the things is writing down 3 key takeaways from each panel. We have 3 panels in total. That was our first panel. So just remember that if you want to get entered into the lottery at the very end.
Okay, all right, wakey, wakey, everyone. This means if you're on your phone right now, or if you have an AirPod in your ear, or if you have any headphones on, I want you to take that off right now, or turn it off, because we are about to start what I personally think you guys will enjoy the most today, which is our game show. And so, this will be a small game that you all can participate in, and of course for this conference's sake it'll pertain to questions about cancer prevention or health in general, and so I hope that you guys will not only have fun but also be able to just take something away from this, if anything. And so this will be headed by Tara and Leona.
Game code is up over there. There's also a QR code, so you can scan it and join. The link is joinmyquiz.com, and you'll input that code on top of it. Top 3 winners will get a $25 gift card. So.
They said 25. It's $10 each. So $10 on each?
For each 3 winners, we'll actually have a $10 gift card. Is anyone still joining? No? Okay. Let's start.
This is taking sound. Oh my god! You should have sound. No, I mean, the screen share is slowing down, but it should have sound right here. Because the quiz it has sound.
Wait, there are teams.
There you go.
that will end the game right now. Okay, it looks like in first place we have Blair. In second place we have Angela. In third place we have Christina. Oh my god. Good job to the winners, and you can come see me for a prize.
Good job, everyone.
Okay, since Claire and Angela are speakers, we'll give the prize to third, fourth place, so you guys can come see me. To third, fourth place, come up. Leslie, please come up for your prize.
Congratulations to all three winners.
Can we call them up?
Okay, first off, before we begin our second panel, can I just have everyone who received an award for the game show come up real quick so we can take a picture?
Claire, come over here because we're co-chair. We have to be in the picture. Them first. Them first. Okay, one more here. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I am glad to see that, well, first off, we had so much participation for the game show, so even if you didn't, receive an award, I'm still glad that you guys participated, and I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. So now we'll be moving on to our second panel, which is HPV prevention, and we will have a short presentation from Miss Laura D'Souza. So please, everyone, give a warm welcome to Miss Lauren.
We have Apuna as well.
A phone number.
Oh, wait. Wait.
Introduce Dr. Sock.
Okay, I'm sorry. There was like a slight miscommunication error, but I would also like to welcome Miss Dr. Mihei Song. She'll be giving us our presentation of promoting HPV prevention and awareness with ACS-YA. She's a gynecologic oncologist at City of Hope and passionate about advancing women's health as well as pioneering cancer therapy. So I'd also like for you guys to give a warm welcome to her, and I'm so sorry about this.
Hello. Hi, my name is Mihei. It's really nice to be here and see all of you guys. I see a lot of students. I see a lot of people wear these vests as youth ambassadors. So I'm really excited to be here. And thank you for inviting me to talk about a topic I'm very passionate about. Am I echoing? No. I'm not echoing. Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to talk to you just about HPV awareness and vaccine and cancer prevention. I work at City of Hope. I'm a gynecologic oncologist, big word, but basically I'm a women's cancer doctor. I do surgeries. I treat women with chemotherapy and then follow them throughout their cancer journey. And so I just wanted to talk to you about an important topic, hopefully that you guys can also be part of, and then afterwards you guys could ask me any questions. So the next slide is going to be a pre-survey. So I want you guys with all the phones take a picture of this and let's see how much information about HPV you guys know. And then hopefully at the end of it, you guys will know a little bit more after this discussion, okay? So I'll give you guys a few minutes to answer some questions, and we'll go from there, okay? I have to admit, when I was your age, not too long ago, I didn't really know too much about HPV. It was a topic that my parents didn't talk to me about. It was a topic that the school didn't talk to me about. And I didn't really know about it until I actually went to medical school. So, hopefully that you guys will be able to learn a little bit more when you're younger, so that as you get older, these are things that you'll be able to do. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is something I'm going to be talking about. What is cancer? What are societal determinants of health? What is HPV? What does it stand for? What is a vaccine? Is it safe? And then some of the side effects. And then for parents, how do I get help paying for these vaccine series? And then getting vaccinated. Next slide. Okay, introduction to cancer. What is cancer? I know many of you guys might have heard of it, but what is it actually? So the term cancer really is a disease in which some of your body's cells grow abnormally, and then it can spread to other parts of your body. So this is a picture. You have a normal cell here, and in the middle are cancer cells, where it's part of the normal cell that starts to grow uncontrollably, and then it can go to other places. Next slide. So societal determinants of health. Next slide. So I just wanted to talk to you just about this because it's very important. All of you guys live in a certain neighborhood. All of you guys eat certain things. And you guys have environments around you that can impact a lot of different things, including your health. So these are 5 domains when we talk about societal determinants of health. So economic stability, education access and quality, healthcare access and quality, neighborhood, where do you live? What zip code do you live? Can really impact in the future what kind of diseases you may have. as well as social and community contact. So it's really important to think about all these things, not just like one focus, like cancer or disease, but really everything that's surrounding you can really make an impact on your health. Next slide. Next slide. So again, these are some of the things that we discuss when we talk about your environment. Safe housing. You know, we're very lucky to have parents to provide a safe roof, but there are many people who may not have safe housing, right? Transportation, neighborhoods, racism, discrimination, and violence, maybe things that we even experience as Asian Americans, I think most of you Asian Americans. Education, job opportunities, and income, right, in the future that may impact you. Access to nutritious food is really important. I would have to say, what you eat now is going to impact you later. A lot of the cancers are caused by obesity, and it's on the rise. Physical activity opportunities. We talked about pollution. I think you guys are talking about pollution and recycling, right? Polluted air and water. And then for me, most importantly, healthcare quality, coverage, and access. You know, a lot of people, even though they want to see the best doctor in the field, maybe it's too far, they don't have transportation, or they're just not aware, or they don't have the right insurance, right? So all these things can impact your access to care. Next paragraph, next slide. So what is HPV? It's called the human papillomavirus. Next slide. So it's a viral infection that commonly causes skin, or mucous membrane growths, like warts. And majority of cervical cancer, more than 95% is due to HPV. And about 79 million persons are currently infected with HPV, and about 14 million people become newly infected each year. And the way this virus is usually transmitted is through sexual intercourse and intimate skin-to-skin contact. I know this audience may be young, but just want to let you know it's very prevalent. About 80% of women are infected with HPV virus. And most of the time you don't know. I was trying to figure out how to compare it. I know we went through a huge pandemic, COVID pandemic, and some people had symptoms, and some people didn't, right? And a lot of people who didn't have COVID symptoms went on and can infect other people, right? Unknowingly. And this is the same thing with HPV. A lot of people who are sexually active, 80% to 80% can have the virus. A lot of times your own immune system fights it, so a lot of times you don't even know. And then years later, when you get tested for HPV, a lot of times that's when people are diagnosed. And so HPV infection can cause your cells, the normal cells, to undergo changes and eventually become cancer. And this is the cancer that I treat at City Hope. Next slide. So I just wanted to tell you that most infections are asymptomatic, cleared by your body, kind of like when you have a common cold, your immune system fights your cold, cough. But there's sometimes maybe a persistent HPV infection in your body, and that causes nearly all cervical cancers. Most people are probably thinking, oh, it's just women. And I have to tell you that men also can get HPV infections. So it's not just for females only. So 90% of anal cancers, 70% of oropharyngeal cancers, and 60 to 70% of vaginal, vulvar, and penile cancers as well. So regardless of sexual orientation, HPV vaccine is lower among Black versus white individuals, and I would have to say even Asian individuals as well. So it's really important to learn what HPV is, what it can cause, and then we're going to talk about how to prevent it. I get a lot of women who may have cancer and say, is there anything that I could have done to prevent this cancer? And most of my answers are no. But in this case, I have to say yes, there is a way to prevent cervical cancer and some of these other cancers. Next slide. So I just want to talk to you about vaccine history, because I don't know, how many of you guys know about HPV vaccine? Raise your hand. Okay. So I would have to say it's minority of you guys, not many, and I wasn't even aware. But it really started in 1933, if you look down here. Richard Schoch discovered papillomavirus in the horns of cottontail rabbits. In 1935, it describes how the progression of this virus turned into cancer. 1937, they discovered that rabbits who overcame this are immune to reinfection. So it's not just you get it once, this infection, you clear it, and then you could get it reinfected again. 1966, they were awarded the Nobel Prize for his work. And then 1997, they linked the virus to human cervical cancer. 1995, WHO declares 2 types of HPV, 16 and 18, as cancerous. And then 2006, this is a little after college for me, a vaccine against HPV 16 and 18 is made available to the public. And then 2008, they received a Nobel Prize. So I just wanted to tell you, it's not just, the vaccine was made 10 years ago. This was made 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. And then the first vaccine was only prevented for 4 HPV virus. 2 of them were benign warts, and 2 of the HPV caused cancer. Now, the second vaccine is approved where it targets against 9 HPV types, which is really important. And then over 300 million HPV vaccines have been distributed worldwide. So I just want to say cervical cancer may not be the most common type of cancer in the United States, but in a lot of underserved countries are struggling with cervical cancer. Next paragraph. So I just wanted to talk, we talked about different types of cancer. It's not just for females, but I just wanted to talk about it's also for males as well. Next paragraph, next slide. So when can I start the HPV vaccine? How many of you guys are older than 12 years old? You guys are all, how many of you guys are younger than 12? So there's some of you, I don't know your age. But, so it really starts at age 9. I'm talking about age 12 because that's when most boys and girls get vaccinated for this. It's usually age 11 to 12, but it can start as early as 9. And then so starting at age 9 through 14 years old, there's only 2 shots for this vaccine, day 0 and then 6 to 12 months later. If you are 15, how many of you guys are 15 and over? 15 to 26, you get 3 shots. That's because when you're younger, your immune system is much better and is able to get an immune response. So you get one shot today, next one in 2 months, and the next one in 6 months. Let's say you never got that vaccine series by the age 26. There is still benefit for you to get vaccine up to age 45, and this is for women. Especially for people who have precancerous cells, it shows that when you get vaccine, even up to age 45, it decreases your chance of getting it again up to 40 to 60%. Imagine having a vaccine or a treatment that will decrease your risk of getting precancerous cells. So it's really important to think about vaccines, even if you're over the age of 26. Okay, next slide. This is amazing because this is the only vaccine that works against cancer, and something that all of us should be thinking about, parents, students. It really works against building an immune response to the cancerous types of HPV. Up to 88% can be prevented and really decrease the risk of benign warts as well as cancerous types. So it's really, it can prevent up to 33,000 types of these cancer by preventing the HPV infection that cause them. That's the same as the average attendance for a baseball game. I don't know if you guys went to the Dodgers game, but imagine 33,000 people being able to be without cancer. Next slide. So vaccine safety. I know there's a lot of misinformation about vaccine. We talk about social media, and you guys talked about it. You guys hear news, you guys hear friends, you guys hear adults talk about vaccines. And I just want to tell you, there's a lot of information on Google, but we've given out the vaccine in millions of people and talk about worldwide as well, not just in the US. From 2014 to 2024, more than 1,000 clinical trials have been performed. And it's recommended by every agency, WHO, CDC, American Academic of Pediatrics. These are some of the common side effects for the vaccine because it's an injection, right? So you may have pain, redness, fever, headache, nausea, dizziness, fainting. But these side effects are usually mild and short-lived. Serious side effects can occur, they're rare, but can include allergic reactions. So it's really important to talk to your doctor. I don't know how many of you guys see your pediatrician every year, but it's something that you guys might want to ask if you guys haven't had the vaccine yet. And it's something you may want to ask your parents, right? Did did I get my HPV vaccine yet? Can I get it? Or can I catch up, right? So it's really important for both boys and girls, not just girls, but in order to be successful in this vaccination program, it's important that all of us, boys and girls, get it. Next slide. So I just want to talk about this picture. So it's like kind of like a tip of the iceberg. I see cervical cancer patients, but I also see women who have precancerous cells, which is the cervical precancerous, which is way more prevalent. So 196,000 versus 11,000. I want to treat when it becomes precancerous so it doesn't turn into cancer. But these are other cancers. They're way lower than the number of cervical precancerous, but it can still happen. Again, back of the throat, it can happen for both males and females as well, these other organs. Again, HPV vaccine at age 11 to 12 could prevent over 90% of these cancers. Okay, next slide. Again, millions of doses have been given worldwide and decreases. However, through the pandemic, I'm sure you guys know, a lot of people couldn't go to the doctor. It was through Zoom or it was through televideo. So a lot of young boys and girls were not able to get the vaccine during the pandemic. And now that it's getting better, I'm hoping that these numbers will go back up. Next slide. We talked about the side effects. Next slide. Okay, so a lot of people say if I get the vaccine, am I able to get pregnant later? I just wanted to let you know that it doesn't affect your fertility, the ability to get pregnant when you're ready to. But if you do get cancer, it can affect your ability to get pregnant. Remember that for females, you need your reproductive organs, and when you have cervical cancer, a lot of times we treat it with surgery, as well as radiation or chemotherapy that can prevent pregnancy in the future. So I've had young women with cervical cancer, and unfortunately, we're not able to save their ability to get pregnant. So I just want to say I've seen young patients as well as older patients, and this is a very important topic. So just to reinforce, the vaccination doesn't affect your ability to get pregnant, but cancers do. Okay, next slide. So how can I protect myself? I think I don't want to be like doctor who only treats cancer. I actually want to talk about preventing cancers. So this is why I'm here, because this is a passion of mine. I have young children, and so I'm hoping that I could impart what I learned to them as well, and take part of this action. So these are some of the things that you can do as ambassadors, as well as students in clubs, your friends, go to social media, be an influencer, about how to protect yourself. So these are ways to reduce your risk of getting HPV vaccine, but it's not totally foolproof, which is why we say vaccines are important as well. It's important to get regular pelvic exams or see your doctor regularly, even as you get older, even after you leave, you become an adult. It's really important for you to see a doctor every year. Okay. Next slide. This is a lot of words here, but what is cervical cancer and who is at risk? And so I know these things, you're young, so you're not thinking about these, but there are parents in this room, and you may know people who are struggling or who are going through this journey. I just wanted to just put it out there. It's on the slide for you to just read. That's really important for us at this time, just to get your vaccine and then just get checkups. Pap smear is a screening test for cervical cancer. Who here has heard of pap smears? Okay. So again, not that many, but I'm glad we're talking about it here, right? Because a lot of, my parents never talked to me about pap smears, and it's probably because they never went to a doctor. And so I learned it as a medical student, as a doctor, when I became a gynecologist. So pap smears are really important, even if you have the vaccine, because the vaccine is not 100% effective. It covers up to 70% of cervical cancers, but that last 30% can be caught by pap smear screening. So it's really important to still get your test done. Next slide. If any of you guys, are wondering about the cost of vaccines, a lot of these programs provided for free, especially people who are uninsured, Medicaid eligible. There's healthcare providers, schools, Department of Health, any of the community clinics will offer these vaccines for free. So you don't have to worry about it if that's something that's keeping you from getting vaccinated. Next. Avoid missed opportunities. Again, you know, if you're doing sports, you need to get routine physicals. This is the best time to ask. And then encourage parents. You know, a lot of times I waited for my parents to talk to me, but you know, I want to encourage my kids to talk to me first, right? If there's any concerns or questions, go to your parents because they love you. You know, they love you the most. And so I'm hoping that we could have an open dialogue with you know those around us, right, our community. Next. So take action, getting vaccinated. I feel like I'm talking about this for every slide. But again, yeah, just wanted to hone it. Okay, next slide. HPV resources, next slide. So where can you get your vaccine or test? Again, these are the different numbers they could call. I think you guys are all part of ACS. They have numbers and they have a list of probably providers in your community where you could talk to. Next slide. And this is from City of Hope. I'm so happy to be part of this group and providers. I know we have our great nurses here, and Lauren here, and Sophia. So I just want to say that we are here, we're down the block, we're Doherty. And so if you guys have any questions or want to be a part of it, please reach out. I'm happy to talk to you after this as well, if you guys have any questions. Next slide. These are the references that you guys can look up. And next slide. So thank you. So take the post-survey. I'm hoping that some of you guys have learned something so that some of these questions are easier to answer, okay? So thank you so much. I think we have a panel. Okay.
All right, so thank you, Ms. Song, for that wonderful presentation. And now we will be beginning our second panel, which is about HPV. And so, aside from Dr. Song, which I'm sure we've all given an extensive warm welcome, I'd also like for you guys to welcome Ms. Abrava Vishwanath to the stage. I'm sorry, I hope I didn't mispronounce that. Okay. But yeah, please welcome her to the stage as well.
Right, can you hear me?
I want to hold it closer to your mouth. You have to like kind of eat the mic.
Okay, thank you guys for having me here. I'm representing Sahas for Cause. It's an immigrant South Asian organization. And we work with South Asian community and address a lot of the immigrant issues, including cancer prevention and accessibility to care, language barriers, cultural differences, and everything it takes to be in America as an immigrant. And this is one of my passion projects too. I really want to contribute a lot in the field of women's health, both mental, physical, as well as emotional health, which we often ignore. And it's very important to address this specific topic of cancer. And there's a lot of social determinants like we previously discussed, and that contribute to this and add as a barrier. I want to move on to this section of the panel discussion, and we already have some questions that we'll come up with. And I'll start off by shooting them to you, and you can.
And we can talk about
it. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have a conversation.
So, first one is, what are some of the effective strategies to address misinformation about HPV vaccination on social media and online platforms, especially among parents and adolescents?
I also want to encourage you guys to also answer if you guys want to answer, because we want to make this interactive as possible. So if you guys want to raise your hand, or the parents in the room, oh sorry, I'm going to use this one. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So I want to make this interactive. So I want to be the only one talking because I want you guys to know what you guys are, about this topic. So please, there is a free mic here. If you raise your hand, I'm sure someone could walk around. So don't feel shy. This is an open and safe space. A conversation I never have with my parents. I want to make it safe for you guys to be able to talk to me about and talk to us about all these questions. So I do agree. When I was your age, I don't want to say when I was your age, but we didn't have social media. We didn't have Instagram or Facebook, and we didn't have to deal with this. So a lot of the information that I learned was from, teachers, school, parents, not so much my peers, but you guys are dealing with a lot of information from your peers. And sometimes those voices are a little bit louder, but we don't know which information on these platforms are true versus not. So I really want to encourage you guys to check the validity of these sites, right?
Absolutely.
What are some of your experiences?
One of my experiences working closely with youth, especially in our community, is there's a hesitance to speak about topics related to sex and gender with parents because of our cultural backgrounds, and it's considered taboo sometimes to talk about this. And one of the things we work on very consciously is bridging that gap. How do you bring out these conversations with parents and adults who are probably not very knowledgeable about it themselves? How do you bring this discussion?
No, I agree. And I see parents, I don't know if you guys are sitting next to your kids, but it's a very embarrassing topic, I do have to say, right? Because I don't want to talk about it with my parents, and I don't want to talk about it with my children. But I was born and raised in the States, and it's going to be talked about in school if you're not going to be talking about it with your parents or your kids, right? And so, we want to be the ones bringing up the conversation first as a parent to talk about all the facts and not just the myths that you hear from your peers and TikTok and Facebook. Yes?
I think one thing that we can consider as students is that our state does require health as a course, and you most definitely, your health teacher should cover sex education and all the different things. Like not even just like sex, but also like dating, relationships, and all of that. So, I know that maybe for some of you that may not be your primary interest, that may not be, your field of study in the future, but please do pay attention. This is resources that you may not necessarily have had, your parents may not necessarily have had, but if you listen and you actually try and learn from these things, you will be able to know a lot more, and you can prevent from making mistakes that will cost you a lot later on in life.
No, thank you. That's a great point. I think there are so many resources in schools as well, so definitely, go to your teachers. Okay.
Absolutely. The other thing is, other than these resources, it all centers around your health. Looking at it from a holistic perspective, we want everyone to be healthy, and the community wants to look for everyone's well-being, right? And this comes from knowledge and acknowledgement of each other's health and each other's knowledge about these things. And I keep getting back to opening up dialogues, because I've seen in our community that that's the biggest barrier. And it's very important to have these discussions. It might be uncomfortable initially, but it's very important. So, moving on to the next question. Sorry. In what ways can community outreach and engagement programs contribute to increasing awareness and understanding of HPV vaccination among parents and students? And what cultural or language-specific barriers might exist within the Asian American communities that could impact the awareness and access to HPV vaccination, and how can these barriers be effectively addressed? We heard a lot about it in your talk as well as on the slides. Would you like to comment a little bit more on this?
Yeah. I also want to I like asking questions because I want to know more information information. But for parents here, how many of you guys heard of the HPV vaccine from the pediatrician? Okay. Okay, so that's good, right? Because a lot of times it's going to be a pediatricians who bring up the vaccine schedule, and they're going to tell you this is recommended, is it optional, is it mandatory, right? Some schools have mandatory vaccines, and so you'll go through them. I don't think this is HPV is mandatory.
It's not mandatory.
It's not mandatory. So it's something that doctors will bring up. Hopefully, your doctors will bring up to you, and if they have the time, they can talk to you more about it. A lot of times, I'm sure, I'm being realistic. How many minutes will a pediatrician talk to you about what HPV is and the importance of it? And it affects you not next year. It's going to affect you in 40 years, right? So how many of you guys are thinking 40 years ahead? So these are things that hopefully the pediatrician in the community is going to talk to you about and spend the time to. So it happens in the doctor's office. I think it happens, hopefully in your community settings, whether, it could be, church, if you go to church, or if you go to like a school club, after school club, you guys have your, ACS. So I think these are avenues where it could be brought up so that people could start having a conversation about it.
Just by a show of hands, how many of you think you will be comfortable talking about this with your parents and say, hey mom, or dad, or whoever in the family, would you be able to talk about this to your parents and say, okay, I think it's a good idea to get this. Are you willing to take me there? Show of hands.
I think one thing that was like really big that I just had brought up to me was definitely like the language barrier, because like for me and definitely a lot of my peers, I don't feel as connected to my native language, which would be Chinese in this case, and it might feel difficult to talk about these like more complex topics, especially in a language you're not super familiar with, and already combined with like the awkwardness that people generally feel about approaching topics like related to sex and like STDs and just stuff related to that. I feel like a language barrier, and also the fact that like there's not a lot of programs I can really think of that are oriented to like people who speak a language aside from English that regard HPV and HPV prevention.
And like the solution to what she just brought up, I think, is that we as the newer generation, we're receiving an education to teach us about these things. We can, first of all, learn about these things and maybe communicate with people, professionals that maybe do speak native language, and make sure that like they can help translate perhaps and create groups. They can like kind of lead the groups and then eventually transition into us young people, re-educating the older generation who may not necessarily have had that education.
Hi, I'm D'Souza, so I'm a health educator, and I think it's also important that if you encourage your I think it's also important for a lot of high schools as the youth, you can also educate by encouraging like peer health educators, having that program, like as a public health professional, I think a lot of times, like you said, it's because of cultural language barriers. I know that because my parents are also immigrants from India. For like Chinese culture and other cultures, it doesn't matter where you are, where you come from. I think a lot of times having peer health education, having that support, having self-advocacy is the best way to advocate for your health, because no one else will do it for you. It doesn't matter if you're as young as 12 or 15 or as old as 85. I think advocating for your health is so important, and I think you need to use your courageous voices, because every generation does want to hear a strong voice to advocate for your health. Like hearing these impactful stories of survivors, medical professionals, nurses, and other community members to support yourself and your own health journey creates, well-being, and also creates an impact for not only your health, but also the health of your loved ones. And I also strongly encourage like discussions. I know the holiday season is coming up, so having these discussions about like your family medical history, whether it's like cancer, diabetes, heart disease, mental health, I think is so important. I know it's very taboo to talk about it, but even I myself, I have these conversations with my parents. Even when they get older, you never know if you need to talk about it, because I think advocating, knowing your history, and knowing how you can take better care of your health will also affect your loved ones, your friends, your family, and the communities that you serve, because you all are the future, and we rely on you to have this advocacy, so that way we can have a lasting impact on our communities for future generations, even long before like all of us are, pass away from this earth. So we rely on you, the future, and we invest in you because you guys are the ones who have the stronger voices who can make that change, not just for previous generations, but also for future generations who come after you.
I believe that everything starts within the community first. That's how grassroots movements start. And if you Google and see, there's a study done on Latino population where, again, it's very taboo to talk about sex. It's very taboo to bring up these discussions. And there's a study called the Tamale Lesson Study, if I'm not mistaken, that talks about educating Hispanic women about HPV and cervical cancer through a lesson while making tamales. You could do something like that within your community. Food brings people together. They always say the way to a person's heart is through the belly. So, make the most of it, embrace your culture, as well as incorporate these things in conversations to actually make a difference. A small difference within the community can grow to something really big and meaningful and affect the rest of the world.
I definitely agree, and I just want to echo everybody's comments here. I'm just one person, you're just one person, we're just one person here, right? I'm not an influencer, so I don't have 1 million followers. But if I talk to, there's like maybe 50 of you guys here, you guys talk to 5 more people, they talk to 5 more people, the people that you guys will reach will exponentially get bigger, right? So I think that's what we're talking about, small changes. You don't have to think about, I need 10,000 followers, talk to them about HPV. It's just, your friend, your family, your relatives. So just want you guys to start thinking about small steps and important actions you guys can take.
Okay, one last,
Community and unity. I know most of us in this room may identify with like Asian, African American, Hispanic, Latinx, but it's also important to be an ally, show allyship for other communities, especially because we need advocacy for all of our communities, pride community to identify with that. I think a lot of times we forget that we're stronger together and we're actually more similar than divided, because there's a lot of discrimination and bias that we see, not just in Asian community, but like the Black community, we have Hispanic community, even Europeans and whites, American history, even like Italians and Irish people, they face like famines and stuff like that. So being unified in a very globalized and diverse society is so important. So educating your parents, I know my parents, when they came to this country, they faced a lot of barriers, immigrating way back in the 1970s and 80s, way before even I was born and before you all were born. But it's really important to share those stories, because even the historical injustices, like for the African American community, right? And then even the Latinx community, there are generations who don't have that privilege of knowing their culture and language, because the US school system or healthcare system put a lot of barriers to that. Even Asian Americans, has a lot of injustices, but being unified, knowing that we all have barriers and we all have different privileges and understandings, we're very lucky that we have a unity. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Sorry, I just stopped.
And we just have our 2 panelists just summarize the key takeaways to what we discussed today.
Just to summarize, we just talked about what HPV is. It's very prevalent, up to 80%. So vaccination is key and prevention is key. So we really want to, but also advocacy is really important for self and for others. And definitely, I think the main takeaway is we're better united and we can definitely make more change together. So I really appreciate this arena for us to come together as a community. It's a beautiful thing to see you guys, to see all of us kind of come together for a specific cause. Thank you.
I want to end by saying every big change begins small. Start at home and watch it grow. It's a great feeling. So keep the momentum going. Thank you guys.
Wait. Okay, I'd just like to thank Dr. Song and Ms. Aperva for coming here once again. So, you're just like some gifts, like, yeah, because they took the time out of their day to just come here, and that just really means more than honestly anything you could imagine to us. So, everyone, please give another round of applause to them. And yeah, that will conclude our panel on HPV. And so now I would, get that picture out of the way. Okay. And if you haven't already, make sure to fill out your Smarty goals for the HPV section. And while you're at it, you might also want to write your name on the bottom of the sheet, because we will want to verify that you actually completed the sheet, so you can participate in the raffle. And so now, without further ado, I would like to welcome Miss Leslie Hahn to the stage for her presentation on oncology nursing. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to her.
Thank you, everyone. I know it's a very long day, but I do want to appreciate all of your focused attention. As your colleagues here have, mentioned, it's so easy to be on social media devices, even during our time together. So that's why, for me, speaking as a nursing professional, it's so important for me to think and inspire you to think about what you want to contribute in this world. Are you going to be a giver, or are you going to be a taker? So why are you here today? Did your parents make you come? Or are you here to actually gain something from the day and to take home something that will stay with you for the rest of your lives? You all, I can tell, have a very unique, niche position here. You live in an environment where there's a lot of Chinese speakers, but you are all also very eloquent in English. So because you are bilingual, you have an immense role that you can play in delivering healthcare. There is so much value in being able to be a healthcare professional that speaks the language of the person that you are caring for. So you have a gift. So what we wanted to share with you today, I have Chimdi Marcus with me and Connor Ward. We are nurses at City of Hope. We love what we do. City of Hope is an oncology hospital, so all we do is cancer care. But there's a lot of hospitals everywhere you work. So I wanted to give you an introduction of what it is to become a nurse. So we'll go to the next slide. And we'll go quickly, because I know it's the end of your day. So there's only 5 million nurses across the entire United States. Total population of the entire country is, I think, somewhere in 315 million. So 1 in 100 people could be a nurse. We are the backbone of healthcare. Every single touch point of a patient coming into the office, a patient coming in that has to receive care in the hospital, in the ED, the emergency department, touches a nurse. So the nurse is there consistently at the bedside behind every single medicine, procedure, surgery. There's a nurse involved. Next slide. There are a variety of areas that you can work. Predominantly, there's a clinical aspect to what we do. I know there's perhaps many of you think nurses is just taking care of cleaning up patients, assisting them with their walking, assisting with daily activity living, but we as nurses at City of Hope, we have different functions. I worked in hematology oncology, so that deals with blood cancers. We gave chemotherapy directly to patients. We gave stem cell transplants to patients. We are now embarking on another treatment called CAR T-cell. This is where you're using your own immune system to fight the cancer cells. So tertiary line of treatment, nurses are at every step of that pathway. Chindi will talk to you about clinical research nursing, and Connor is an ICU nurse, which is intensive care unit nurse at City of Hope. So there are a gazillion directions that you can go in nursing, and it's not just helping to clean patients. So I want you to get that. If you can take away anything from that, nursing is absolutely a profession and something that gives back, and you know what you're doing every day. Slide. So in the Gallup poll, this is a survey taken amongst the general population of the United States. Nurses has been voted the #1 trusted profession for the last 2 decades. So now, over 22 years, nurses have been voted the most trusted. So we, as a profession, never will take that for granted. Our patients come to us for our expertise, our recommendation, and most essentially, what would you do if you were me? So in thinking through Dr. Sung's talk about the HPV vaccine, nurses are the ones telling you, I would do this for my own child. I would do this if I were me. You know, they will give that advice to patients, and patients will absolutely receive that. Next slide. So the future need is that there's going to be a shortage of nurses across the globe. So I was talking with some of you earlier today. There's going to be a nursing shortage. So then if you're thinking about a future career and something called job security, you will have a job no matter where you live in the world. Your job will be appreciated and needed no matter where you end up deciding you want to live. Next slide. And here are different practice settings you can work. You can work in a community clinic. This is a doctor's office. City of Hope has over 30 clinical network sites in Southern California where we give chemotherapy, we give radiation, and it's where patients come in and they go home. So those are clinic type facilities. We work in a hospital. You can also work in a school. I will tell you, probably the funnest job is working at Disneyland. You can be the Disneyland nurse, right? So as long as you have your training, nurse is pretty much needed in almost every capacity and place that you go to. Next slide. So education and licensing, I'm going to go over a few different avenues to become a nurse. We'll go to the next slide. So the licensed vocational nurse is your basic entry-level nurse. It would take about 12 to 14 months of preparation. Average salary will range between $60,000 to $80,000, depending on how long you progress. Obviously, every year you work, you're going to accrue more experience, and you also get your salary increased. Second to that would be associate degree nurse. This is typically, it can range from $60,000 to $120,000. I started as a new graduate nurse, as a bachelor's prepared nurse, so this would be where you go to a 4-year college. You can actually apply for the major of nursing, much like you would engineering, environmental science. You can actually apply for a nursing degree. And that's where typically a lot of nurses in the hospital setting will have a bachelor's prepared nurse. And you can range in salary between $100,000 to $171,000. Next slide. Master's of Science is where I ended up going into. I progressed into nursing leadership. So for me, this was an avenue where I felt I can speak out and help more nurses by becoming a leader in that profession. So I became a nurse manager. Also, other roles would involve clinical nurse specialists, nurse educators, nurse administrators. A lot of chief nursing officers will actually get to the PhD level. So our salaries can range between $100,000 to $200,000, and then all the way to the PhD level up to $266,000. So there's many, many, many avenues that you can take into the profession of nursing. Next slide. So if you're interested in becoming, I think someone mentioned here, HOSA is pretty prevalent on one of your school campuses. They really advocate for the future health professionals. So if you think about our aging population, we call them baby boomers. You may have, are you Gen Z? What are you all at, Gen A?
Gen Z.
You're Gen Z, okay. So maybe my kids are Gen Alpha right now. So think about how many of our population is actually going to be aging above the age of 65. There's going to be an incredible need for bedside clinicians to be able to take care of that population of baby boomers that is now reaching the age of their 70s. So that's why healthcare will be in demand no matter where you go. And next slide. So City of Hope is one of 54 National Cancer Institute designated comprehensive cancer centers. We just got voted top 5 in the whole country, and we're #1 in California. So we are super proud to be City of Hope nurses, and we absolutely take pride in delivering top-level oncology care to our patients. And Dr. Sami, of course. Nice to meet you today, by the way. And next slide.
So here's my story. I did 4 years of high school, and then I went into college, and I did 4 years college, but then I was going to be a dental student. I ended up pivoting. I didn't think I wanted to go into dentistry, which would have required another 4 years of school and whatnot. So for me, my path pivoted, and I actually went to an accelerated bachelor's program for nursing. So I completed my nursing degree in 2 years, and then after I had children, it was COVID, I actually went back and got a master's of science in nursing. So that's sort of my education journey. And just know a lot of your employers will actually give you stipends or educational reimbursements once you have a full-time job. So how many of you have had a job? Right on, okay. This is how you get your foot in the door. Find a job where you can learn the trade that you want to go into. I spoke with Evan earlier. He's volunteering right now. Volunteering in hospitals is another great way to think about entering the healthcare field. So I started as a new graduate nurse at City of Hope. We will train you for about 3 to 4 months. So think about that. You're training with another nurse until you independently launch and take care of patients on your own. So our training program at City of Hope is about 3 months. From there, I was a nurse for 6 years on the floor, and I worked night shift. So I talked with some of you about shift work. Typically, nurses will do anywhere between 3 12-hour shifts, which means you work 3 days a week and then you're off for 4 days. So this is the work-life balance that we really recommend for you to think about in your future career, because that's the beauty of nursing is its shifts. So you do sometimes have to work weekends, you do sometimes have to work holidays, but you get a differential for that. Differential means extra pay per hour because you're working those premium hours that no one wants to work. So if you work night shift, you get a night shift differential. You work a lot of weekends, you get a weekend differential. And then I became a nurse manager after 6 years working as a nurse on the floor. And then now for the past 2 years, I've been program director of nursing workforce. And then next slide, I think. Oh, we're gonna hide this so we can stop sharing. I'm gonna have Chimdi share her story of how she became a nurse, and then Connor will be after her.
Hi, everyone. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chimdi. I love working in oncology. I absolutely love working in oncology. And I also love speaking and talking with students who are in high school, just to let you know that there is a field called nursing that you can get into. I also had a little bit of a diverse interest into entering into the nursing field. I did a 4-year bachelor's degree in health science. And then afterward, I decided to do a master's in nursing, but that master's was for people who have a bachelor's that's in the health field, but that wasn't in nursing. So for my bachelor's in health science, I did the master's in nursing for 2 years. And I started off working at a hospital in Houston, Texas. So I'm not originally from California, I just moved here in August. I started off working in an oncology hospital in Texas called MD Anderson. I don't know if anyone has heard of that, but it's also another amazing hospital just like City of Hope. And from there, I worked at the bedside for a few years in the surgical oncology, post-surgical unit, PACU unit as well. But I personally realized, like, hey, I love being a nurse, I love oncology, but I know that there's so much more. I have a mind, I don't know how many of us are like big thinkers. Like, I like to overthink, I like to look at the trend of things, and so I thought, hey, I want to go into a field that would allow me to think a little more in depth, to have more of a focus on what I can do, or just have more of a focus on something. So I decided to go into clinical research. So now I work at City of Hope as a clinical research nurse, and I absolutely love it. I work on a team called the Phase 1 disease team. And that team, we're able to see all sorts of cancers, from lung cancer to breast cancer to sarcomas. I mean, we work with patients from all sorts of cancers. And how many of us have heard of Tylenol? How many of us have, or ibuprofen, right? So the whole point of research nursing is that Tylenol and ibuprofen, which is a medication that's on the market right now, what we're doing as research nurses is that we're trialing medications, we're working with pharmaceutical companies, and we're trialing medications so that hopefully we can see in the next 10 or 12 years to see that medication that we're trialing become on the market like Tylenol or ibuprofen is. So as a research nurse, I'm studying symptoms, I'm doing patient education, also doing patient advocacy, like a lot of nursing is just to see how this medication, if it could possibly target the cancer cell that is in the patient's body, to either reduce it or to stabilize the cancer. So research is such a fulfilling field in my opinion. I agree with what Leslie said, that nurses are at every step of a patient's journey from the moment they step into the hospital until the moment they leave. I mean, even as a research nurse, I still find myself worrying about other things that is kind of outside of my scope, but it's just the fulfilling part of a nurse that like you really get to just be a human with patients and just to really stand with your patient, even if you're not at the bedside. I mean, one day at work, I saw one of my research patients. I saw her walking. She was an older lady. She was also Asian as well. She didn't speak much English. I don't speak Cantonese, but you know, the compassion is still there. And I saw her walk into her car, and I walked with her to her car, and I was like, if I wasn't a nurse, I don't know if I could even do that. You know, I don't know if I could have that kind of rapport or trust with a patient, and I feel so fulfilled that I could be in a role, even though I'm not at the bedside, but that I can be in a role that allows me to still have the compassion and to be able to walk with my patients, you guys. Cancer is such a sensitive topic. Cancer is such a, it's a sad topic, you know, and we have someone in here that I met earlier who has overcome cancer, who says she's in remission. You know, that's such a, it's a sad topic, but you go to places like City of Hope, you have nurses, you have doctors that can work with you so that we can let you know that there is hope. You know, nothing is perfect, healthcare is not perfect, but there is hope. And I'm just so thankful as a nurse, even a research nurse, that I get to walk with my patients. So yeah, if anyone is ever interested in research nursing, please reach out to me. I'm a big advocate for it. I may be biased, but I think nursing is the best field to go into, this is my opinion. But I'm a huge advocate for nursing, for advocacy, for research. So hit me up if you have any questions. Nice to meet you all.
Hi everyone, my name is Connor Ward, and I'm an ICU nurse at City of Hope. And nursing is often described as a calling, and for me, my story of nursing is that the phone was ringing, but I just took a little bit of time to pick it up. So both of my parents, their parents were both nurses, their mothers, and my mom is a nurse. She actually works at City of Hope also. She's worked there for 30 years, and my dad and my mom met at City of Hope, and my dad was doing pharmacy rotations, so I was pretty much born at City of Hope. But just my education, so I was always interested in sciences. When I was in middle school, I really loved the science fair. We had one every year, and me and my mom once did a science project where we got to go to different restaurants that like, we usually don't eat at, and we swabbed the tables, and we got to see what grows. And it was really interesting, but I just used it as an excuse to go to fun restaurants. And in high school, I was interested in biology, so that's what I decided to major in. And so when I went to college, I went to Cal State Fullerton for a biology major. And biology is the study of life. So you get to learn about anything that's living, cells, animals, the human body, plants. And then from there I decided, like, what am I going to do next? So I got a job at City of Hope as a nurse assistant. And from there I got to see all the different roles that you can do. And with the biology major, you can do a lot. So I looked at physician assistants, doctors, nurses. And you know, my whole life my mom had said, nursing is a great field. And all the nurses I worked with were telling me to do nursing. But when I really looked at it, nursing is the true calling and the true passion. To work with other great nurses and also with your patients. You're really hands-on. You're always moving around and you're finding out new things. So I ended up choosing nursing eventually. So I went to an accelerated nursing program after undergrad. And finally I was done, I graduated, and I got a job at City of Hope in the ICU. But something that I heard today from one of your peers was saying that cancer does not care if you're rich or if you're poor. And working with cancer patients specifically, I can really attest to that. It's very equalizing getting a cancer diagnosis. It can affect anybody. And when you go to your job, if you do get to work with cancer patients, oftentimes their diagnosis becomes their entire life. But when you see them, you get to look at them just as they are, without their diagnosis. You get to treat them. So when I leave work, I feel very fulfilled. And you know, you guys are all in the time of your life where you get to choose, like, what are you going to do next with your job? And people say, like, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I really hope that you look at all the different options you have. But for me personally, when I leave my job, I really do feel fulfilled, and that's a field that I want to stay in.
Come see us if you have any questions at our booth and get some freebies. Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you. Take everybody. We'll take a group picture together.
my phone to take a oh, thank you.
I have the beauty cap, so too many ads.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay, one more. 3, 2, 1. Okay, wonderful.
And now let's give a warm welcome to Myron Dean Kwan, who is the CEO of Pacific Asian Counseling Services, providing mental health services to low-income Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. He has served on various tobacco control committees and led several nonprofits focused on behavioral health and legal support for Asian communities. Mr. Kwan has also taught at prestigious law schools and holds degrees from Northwestern University, Boston University, and UC Berkeley. He and his husband are raising two middle school age brothers of Cambodian descent. And reminder for everyone to pay attention to his speech to fill out your Smarty goals so you can turn it in and enter the lottery. Thank you.
I actually was not planning on doing a speech, but then at the live rehearsal, people said, "Oh, you should do a speech." So just let everyone know, I was planning to do a panel discussion with Hannah, but that's okay too. A couple of things, or just a few things. I'm trying to figure out what I want to share with folks here. Main takeaway before you get to the major part, I kind of was like you many years ago. And I'm definitely the one in the back who was quiet and looked like he wasn't paying attention. So I'm going to just say that I'm doing a lot of speaking nowadays, and you hear me talk loudly. I never spoke in middle school, I didn't speak in high school, I probably didn't speak in college. So just a reminder, those of you who are introverts, and those of you who play on your phone, perhaps some of the loudest spots in your brain, and at some point I hope you bring it out to your friends, your family, because you have a lot to say. So again, don't let people fool you. There are a lot of people out there who are talking all the time. That's not me. I'm actually very happy sitting there quietly listening to everyone. But then, again, go panel, and planner said, "Oh no, make Myron Kwan speak and talk a lot." So cool, whatever. So just again, doesn't mean, just because you're quiet right now and you're in high school, don't mean you can't be a lot louder when you go to college or grad school or if you want to go straight to work. So just a reminder, because you're quiet now, does not mean you have to be quiet when you're older. And then also to the people talk a lot, you can quiet down more and listen perhaps, right? It's just something to think about. Personal history, born and raised in Berkeley, California. Parents, grandparents are from Toisan, Guangzhou, China. They all came from there. They are all four of them. My grandparents and parents are World War II survivors. I'm very fortunate my mom is still living nearby. She's in Alhambra, down the street at Main and Woodward, Maine on Stoneman, Maine. So she's really close by to us. So that's part of why it's easy for me to stop by and visit everyone. What else can I share? First generation, like many of you, I worry, right? First generation, going to college maybe. First generation, maybe grad school. I know a lot of your parents put a lot of pressure on you, right? So I'm lucky. I went to UC Berkeley. It was a lot easier. Now it's like really, really hard, and that's okay. Don't let it stress you out. I'm also very lucky that even though I'm first generation, I went to law school. And so again, you hear folks in the room talk about getting a nursing degree, a medical degree, engineering, whatever. That's nice for a lot of people, but maybe not for you easily. Why do I say that? No one in my family had a law degree, right? And I didn't know nothing about being a lawyer or the exams or all of that. And I was surrounded, again, like you've heard about the so-called imposter syndrome. I was surrounded by a lot of white folks whose parents, their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents were all lawyers. So they were just able to swim in law school and understand everything that was happening and smile and talk a lot and really shine. And here I am, first generation, going to law school. My parents ran a mom and pop grocery store, so again, like a lot of other small business owners are Asian American. I had no idea what was happening. So again, it's not you, it's the system. So again, I'm just calling it out. Don't be, again, you're all high performers, you're sort of here, your parents or your friends or your school say you need to show up and be a youth ambassador. That's just the beginning. That just means people think they believe you have an opportunity to make a huge difference in the world, but it really must be up to you and learning your own support network to figure it out. So again, for me, in law school in particular, I surround myself by other Asian American, first generation folks who are trying to make it a difference in the world, okay? So again, just another thing, again, I know all of you introverts are still listening, even if you're not making eye contact. A little bit about my nonprofit. It's over 45 years old. I'm very lucky to run it. About $10 million. We have sister agencies here in Rosemead, Flowery Park, and Alhambra. But for myself, we're in Long Beach, Westchester, and Van Nuys. And we do the work we do real simple, right? Asian people don't talk about mental health, right? Because again, if you say you have schizophrenia, people are like, oh no. We're not going to talk about any relative schizophrenia and depression. We rarely say they went back to Thailand and they're no longer living with us. We don't even talk about it. I think things are better. I think, again, folks in the room who are younger are the ones who can help talk about mental health and really push it, right? Because again, during COVID, we just speak a little bit more about mental health issues. But again, now's the time to continue to talk about it and make it more of a two-way street. So again, we're a 40-year-old organization. Why we exist is because back in the day, they would say, so here's now, oh, mental health is for white people. Only white people have mental health issues. We just got here in this country. We didn't speak English. We had to figure out how to survive. Why is it you have mental health? Or suck it up, right? Again, family pressure. We survived World War II. We survived being bombed by other people. Why are you complaining about your feelings, right? So again, making it a two-way street. I'm not saying that our parents and grandparents are wrong. They have their feelings. I will say that they have their viewpoint, and something that just for you to think about. It brings us back to the HPV conversation, where again, it's really awkward to talk about HPV with your elders. So again, you have to figure out how you can get there. The other thing that I think everyone in the room should always just think a little bit about is to stop the hate. That issue that's been going on for a few years now. Again, you talk to anyone who's even my age, who's a lot older, we've all experienced all sorts of microaggressions, anti-Asian hate, accent discrimination, you speak English so well, where are you from? Now we at least talk about it, right? So back in the 70s and 80s, my parents would experience that. They would say, go back to Saigon, or you have a heavy accent where you're saying, it still happens now, right? But it's a little bit better in that we can at least try to expose sort of the English-only, white-centric behavior of people and try not just accept that as where we're at. Other thing, again, I think we're all going to be talking about a little bit as we move forward into our new 2025 January. We unfortunately are entering a new administration where, again, we are all, if we're not first-gen immigrants, we're a second generation. If we're not, even if we're third generation, we probably have a lot of friends and family who are here as immigrants or green card holders or naturalized citizens. And again, what does that mean? That means that as we enter our new 2025, this is a country that's going to be a little bit more anti-immigrant. We always pick on Latinos and Spanish-speaking people, but the reality is that if you're Korean, Vietnamese, Indian, Bengali, whatever, we are going to be looked a little bit differently. And so again, just something to think about, because again, we're talking about why do people smoke, why do people use tobacco, and it's because of anxiety, it's because of depression, it's because of racism, right? And so these are some of the bigger picture things that why we might do that kind of behavior or even problem gambling. So just want to make sure that we at least name it, that immigration is a bigger issue for all of us starting next year. As again, some of you may have seen the article. For some reason, there's going to be targeting of Chinese nationals who are military age or men. As like, what is that? Why would you do that, right? Aren't military age men among the best folks here in this country to help be part of our economy? So just most bizarre thing in the world. I guess the last thing I want to share, especially for the young folks in the room, I hear you, I see you. I don't know if your parents do or your grandparents. Why? Why I see you? You're the interpreter. You're the translator. You're the cultural broker. You're the person who has to help your parents sometimes understand what's going on, and that's a lot of pressure, right? I mean, again, normally it's your parents or grandparents are saying, no, this is what you're going to do, you're going to get straight A's, you're going to show up, you're going to do X, Y, and Z, but then once in a while they're telling you, you're helping help them, right, with the interpretation, translation, with school reports, with, seeing the doctor, dealing with a fine. There's all these weird things that are written in English, and unfortunately, there's a little bit of pressure on you to be more grown up in the room, and so I call that out. That's just something to be aware of. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm simply saying that's just the world that we live in. Last thing is, I just want to call out for everyone, because we're going to be doing a panel very soon, talking about vaping and smoking and Zen or whatever. Yay to the American Cancer Society and all the other groups that do the work, but it's very white-centric. Again, English-centric, white-centric, you've already heard from last panel. If we're going to make a difference in the world, we need to be more open to people speak Mandarin, Toisanese, Hakka. We need to have things that are understandable to our community. So, yay to the mainstream groups that work on cancer and tobacco prevention, but there are actually two groups that are out there, and again, I'll say them both a few times. In California, we have a group called APPEAL, APPEAL, and if you want to do Smarty Go, take a look at their website and look at some of the research they've done, looking at Asian Americans, Chinese Americans, Pacific Islanders, South Asians, and just really thinking more about addiction and why we do it, and just, again, not just the white lens or any other lens, but just the Asian lens, the Pacific Islander lens. I think that's a good thing, APPEAL. There's one other group that's also really nearby in the San Gabriel Valley, it's called Mapafasa, and it's called, they're here in Alhambra, actually, and they've been around for a while, and they work also in tobacco control, trying to reduce vaping, smoking, all of that great stuff. Again, great organizations around for about 50 years now, so it's pretty old at this point. But again, they don't say, the model and the messaging that works for white folks are the ones that work for those who are Chinese American. So they recognize that a lot of times if you're second, third gens, even first generation Chinese, what works for you may not be what works for mainstream America. So very lucky that a group called Mapafasa is nearby doing that kind of work. I know I kind of scared all of you. You're like, I expect this kind of conversation. You want to just hear boring cancer and boring tobacco, so I'm not. More than happy to, similar to the nurses and our folks who did their opening conversation, if any of you ever want to talk about how to get a law degree and make a difference in the world, or get an MBA at a top-tier university and make a huge difference in the world, definitely feel free to talk to me. But again, my heart is public health. My heart is making a difference in the world. I saw all the racism and discrimination that happened to my parents and grandparents growing up in the 70s and 80s, and that really rubbed me the wrong way, and that's sort of why I've chosen for many decades now to make a difference by doing this kind of work, trying to get a spark in you guys to make a difference. I'm not saying you have to do what I do. You can go to Bank of America, make a lot of money, but I want you to remember your Asian identity and any sort of like struggles you've had, and try to bring up other folks who are of Asian descent, as well as those who are other immigrants, and those who have had the same kind of struggles that we've all had. So that's kind of my pitch. Again, I know you were expecting something kind of dry and boring on cancer or smoking, but I thought it would be much more useful for you to hear more story about, you know what, I was one of you, very active in Asian American stuff as a kid and teenager. I was quiet, I was sitting in the back, I wasn't paying attention, but I actually was. And so again, just something for you all to think about. I think it will make a huge difference. I think it will make your community and your family proud based on where you choose to be. So thank you.
Hey guys, just reminding all of you guys, if you have your Smarty Goals sheet, please make sure to fill that out because we will be doing a raffle with them. If you want to win prizes, then you gotta fill it out and actually fill it out. Like, fill out all the information about the panels, like what you learned from them and that kind of stuff. And yeah, this is it for our ACS-YA conference. Thank you so much everyone for coming, and make sure to fill out the post-conference survey as well to join ACS-YA and continue doing all the amazing work that we do.
Yeah, okay, so just to reiterate, if you haven't already, make sure to fill out your Smarty Goals and just finish your worksheet in general. Up on the board, you'll find QR codes to the post-conference survey, as well as to join ACS-YA. So if you're a volunteer here and you haven't already filled out the form to register for ACS-YA, I highly recommend you do. And of course, fill out the post-conference survey as well, as it'll definitely help improve our experiences for not only just, this event, but also just future events as well. But yeah, thank you everyone who came. Thank you to everyone who participated in the panels and just in everything that happened today. So yeah, thank you so much. And before we wrap this up, I'd also just like to thank all of our sponsors who made this event possible today. So, of course, we have the wonderful City of Hope. Their booth is right there. We also have, of course, the American Cancer Society. This is an ACS-YA event. We have Sahas, whose booth is over there. One of our wonderful panelists, Apurva, is a representative of Sahas. The Pacific Asian Counseling Services, Mr. Shren, was a representative of that. we also have the Alhambra Library, who so graciously allowed us to let this room be the venue for our event. And finally, we have the Kudos Speech Debate Academy. If you're not aware, actually, I was a student of Kudos themselves. A very wonderful group of people. I can definitely highly recommend Kudos to everyone who's interested in doing speech and debate because, well, if it weren't for Kudos, then I probably wouldn't be able to stand up here and speak to all of you right now. So yeah, thank you to all our collaborators and sponsors, and I will see you all later.
所以你那个最后准备给我们讲的还是怎么不讲？